Welcome to the Character Gallery. Thomas has many friends on the island of Sodor. Visit them all by pressing the left arrow button on your controller. Thomas can be described as a cheeky, fussy little engine. He often gets into scrapes, usually by being overeager to do things best left to bigger and more sensible engines. But clouds never last long in Thomas's life, and he's soon bustling about again, playing his part in the yard and on his very own branch line, of which he is extremely proud. James is a medium-sized engine. His 6 driving wheels are not as big as Gordon's and not as small as Thomas's. He has a fine scarlet coat and brass dome and likes to think of himself as a really splendid engine. This can occasionally lead to highfalutin ideas about the sort of work suitable for such a noble creature. Invariably, they land James in trouble. Percy is the junior member of the principal team of engines. He's a happy little chap who's normally quite happy puffing around the yard with no particular desire for adventure in the great world outside. He is always keen to oblige, a fact of which the other engines are apt to take advantage. Henry is a long, fast engine. He has a thoroughbred look, and, like all thoroughbreds, tends to be somewhat highly strung and prone to illness. But he has his new shape now, and sympathetically driven, he'll give any engine a run for its money. Mavis is a feisty young diesel engine who works at the quarry. She's full of her own ideas and doesn't take kindly to advice. She has a lot to learn about trucks, but with Toby's help, she's learning to be a really useful engine. Gordon is the senior member of the engine family, the fastest and most powerful of my string, and he knows it. He's good-hearted, though, and always willing to forgive, and use his superior strength to help smaller engines out of trouble. Toby is old-fashioned, both in looks and outlook. Every engine, no matter how old, wants to be really useful, and, having once nearly been scrapped, Toby is always happy to work. He's not above being temperamental sometimes, but since he works mainly up an outlying quarry line, he can work off his moods without causing grief to anyone, except his own faithful coach, Henrietta. Annie and Clarabelle were given to Thomas as a reward for being a really useful engine. They're much loved, but have both seen better days. Annie carries passengers. She's always pulled by Thomas and travels facing him. Clarabelle is a composite coach. She has one section for passengers and one for luggage and the guard. Clarabelle always travels behind Annie, facing away from Thomas. Bertie has a great deal in common with Thomas. Ever since their great race, they've been the firmest of friends. Bertie's strongest characteristic is his friendly grin and his readiness to help any engine prepared to admit that just sometimes roads have their uses as well as rails. In a railway family, Harold can hardly avoid having a high profile. He brings a welcome spot of dash to the quiet landscape of Sodor whenever he appears, and even if the noise he makes is occasionally wearing, he is good-hearted, and the engines are always pleased to see him. Like all cranes, Cranky has a high and mighty attitude, which often annoys the engines. Cranky knows that if he ever gets too big for his crane hook, the engines have ways of getting back at him. However, Cranky enjoys teasing them because, he says, it makes for good working relationships. But don't ask Percy if he agrees. It's been many years since I first came to Sodor as a railway engineer. I rose quickly in the company, being a director at an early age and eventually chairman. My imposing appearance, no less than my firm but kindly handling of both engines and staff, earned me the affectionate nickname of the Fat Director. Then, after nationalization, when I was awarded a knighthood for my services to the railway industry, I became Sir Topham Hatt, the Fat Controller.